Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of No Set Path. As always, I'm your host, Drew English, and if this is your first time here, welcome and thanks for joining us. In this episode, we sit down with Tracy Sayre, co-executive director of Moonshot Initiative, an organization dedicated to creating opportunities for women and non-binary filmmakers in the industry. We explore how Tracy co-founded Women's Weekend Film Challenge, which later evolved into Moonshot Initiative, and discuss the organization's mission to address gender equity in film. Tracy offers insights into the challenges of balancing a creative career with family life and reflects on the transition from New York City to the Hudson Valley. We recorded this a while ago, and you'll hear her mention that she will be in LA for the next Moonshot Film Challenge in October. Well, that is this month, so be sure to check out what they are doing out west. I'll be sure to link to everything in the show notes at the end. And with that said, let's get into today's interview with Tracy Sayre of Moonshot Initiative. I wanted to get you in here mostly because I feel like there's a lot of really interesting people living up here locally in the Hudson Valley.
Yeah.
I've had a few interesting filmmakers and a social media manager in here, and just there's a lot happening here, and I think it warrants giving a little exposure to that.
Yeah.
But also we come from similar backgrounds, so we're in the film industry, city expats from New York, just making things work in our new little home away from home. And so I just wanted to have a conversation and just kind of get a feel for where you are now based on where you came from. And I think the best way to start that off is to just give a little primer on what you're doing now. And I need you to correct me because I always want to say you run the it's a women's weekend.
All right, that's where I'm going to correct you.
Correct me, because it's something new now, right?
It's new, yeah.
Okay.
We are now called Moonshot Initiative.
Moonshot Initiative,
yes.
And it was formerly
Women's Weekend Film Challenge.
That's what it was. Okay, great.
Yes. So I'm the co-executive director of Moonshot Initiative. I almost said Women's Weekend. I almost made the same mistake. We work for gender equity in the film industry by creating opportunities for women and non-binary filmmakers to bring their talents, leadership and stories to the forefront of the film industry. We have 3 major programs: our Film Challenge, which I'll probably talk about a lot, our Pilot Accelerator, which helps get more women into the writers' rooms, and then our virtual workshops and courses online. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey for me because right now I'm at a position where I'm helping people get noticed, helping people break through barriers, get through the gates. And 5-6 years ago, I was one of those people that felt completely lost in this industry, just this tiny little, not even a small fish, but a piece of plankton in a giant pond.
That's actually, that's actually a really great way to kind of jump in, because I think, and I'll speak from personal experience, I feel very much the same way. It's I always struggle with, how do I make a difference? Or how do I express myself or be involved in a greater capacity in a creative industry when there's so much competition and so much challenge and everything feels like an uphill battle. But the conversations we've had in the past, even before your organization went through the name change, it's you have legit traction.
Yeah, well, I definitely think it helps to not look at your peers as competition. Yeah. I started looking at my peers as discovering what they needed, and that was the same obstacle that I was facing, and thinking, how can I provide it for them? And as soon as I started thinking about us collectively, it was so much easier to get help for all of us, because I wasn't just talking about, this is what I need. Yeah. I was saying, this is what hundreds of us, thousands of us need to succeed.
Yeah. What's a good example of that, if you have one?
So when we started when we started off as Women's Weekend Film Challenge, let me go into the history of this.
Yeah, sure.
So it started off with a Facebook post. My friend Katrina, she posted on Facebook asking if any women wanted to make a film in one weekend.
Yeah.
And 300 women responded in 10 hours.
Wow.
And they were all I've been working in the business for years, and I've never worked with a female director, DP, editor, composer, whatnot. And I was reading all these posts. I was also an independent filmmaker. I had put together writers' conferences, and I knew that this was going to be a lot of work. So I reached out to my friend Katrina and asked if she wanted help with this. And I was 3 months pregnant at the time. And I was like, all right, this will be a fun project I'll do before the baby comes. And it just blew up from there. So what we did was for that first film challenge, we put 180 people onto 9 crews at the time. And we didn't have any money. We didn't have any equipment. We had no idea what we were doing. On this application form, we just asked, like, what equipment do you have available? What spaces do you have available for filming? Do you have a car? That kind of stuff. And then we placed a director who had a camera with a DP who didn't have a camera, a producer who had sound equipment with a sound mixer who didn't have equipment. And we were just able to puzzle it all together. Then after that film challenge, what everyone told us was that they needed equipment. That was what was holding them back, not having experience on set with the best equipment. So we were able to go to, at the time we went to Zeiss and Red, and we said, hey, we are representing almost 200 filmmakers in New York. This is what they need. Can you help us? And that meeting was so much easier to do because I was speaking on behalf of hundreds of people rather than just myself. I never would have had the guts to just be like, hey, Zeiss, give me $10,000 of lens rentals. But we got them.
Amazing. And where is it now?
So we have done 5 film challenges so far, 4 in New York, 1 in LA. We get about 500 to 600 applications every time.
Wild.
We have a panel of judges that help vet the applications, and the judges include showrunners, Nancy Schreiber, ASC, a bunch of like cinematographers, casting directors. They're reviewing all the work samples. We select about 200 participants, and we provide over $1 million of gear for the weekend. We borrow the cameras from Sony, Red, Ari. We get the lenses from Zeiss. We get full equipment packages from Able Cine and lighting from Cinelease, sound gear from Gotham Sound, pretty much everything that people want. It's like Christmas morning for our crews when they see the equipment list. And we're really helping filmmakers who are at the point of their career where they have to fundraise for they want to showcase their work. They're not getting the work that can actually showcase their talent. And so a lot of them are at the period where they're thinking, do I have to raise $50,000 to make the film to show what I'm capable of? And we're giving them all the tools so that they don't have to do that. They can make a film in one weekend, add that to their portfolio, get the IMDb credits, get a network of 30 new women in every role of production, and they're ready to get the next role. And they have the experience with all this amazing equipment, and they're ready.
Yeah, I think a barrier to entry for a lot of people, especially in the film world, is cost, basically.
So expensive.
I mean, you could equate it to startup cost, essentially. It's like, there will always be the people out there. And it's true. I mean, as time goes on and equipment gets better and cheaper, it's like, yeah, you can literally make a movie on your phone. And that's all well and good. Like, that's fine. But to have like that real on-set experience and to have the real crew experience and, to kind of go through the process top to bottom on making a film, there's cost involved and, there's resources involved. And I think that's a big barrier to entry for a lot of people and something that like really stops them in their tracks. So being able to provide that is amazing.
I just want to add about making a film on your camera, on your phone.
Yeah.
People talk about that like it's lowered all of the thresholds, financial thresholds, but any film that has gotten any traction when it was made on a phone, they had hundreds of thousands, if not millions, for marketing. They had professional crews with the sound and everything and post and everything. So when people think like, oh, you can make a film with your phone, you still need all that money too. Oh. It's still not free.
100%. I think the best recent example is the Apple did what was it for? Oh, it was the M3 processor launch, and they did like a launch film around Halloween, and it was shot on iPhone 15, and if you see the behind the scenes, I mean, the only thing that's accessible to anybody is the phone.
Yeah.
And it's built into like $100,000 stabilized head. And then with all, huge lights on cranes outside of Apple headquarters. And it's like, to your point, it's like, yes, the equipment becomes more accessible to a point, but you still, there is a level where you still need the investment to like make the thing that you want to make, to put your best foot forward. Have you found that more doors have opened because you're specifically focusing on like women, non-binary folks, like people that aren't like, straight white guys like me,
Yeah.
It's like not to kind of like delve too much into that subject, but has that helped you like gain a little more access to the like the resources you're trying to get for your program?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I would say that equipment companies, it's definitely given us more access to them because they definitely see the benefit of doubling their clientele. They realize that they're only marketing to men right now. And so like there's been times when we have a film challenge and their warehouse is just filled with women and they look like they're in shock. They've never seen this many women in their
which is
warehouse.
awesome, which is great.
So it's definitely opened doors with equipment companies and sponsors like that. I will say that there is a lot of, what's the word? Forgetting the word, but people who say that they want to support women and diversity. And so they'll have us come in, they'll have us present something, but like really they're not interested in hiring any of our participants. They just want to look like they are supporting women in film. So I'd say that there's like a lot of like false leads and high hopes, but not actually anyone following through with that. And I would also say that a lot of people don't think of women as an underserved, underrepresented group in filmmaking. When we're applying for grants, women are often not included in the underrepresented category. Even though our project, 56% of our participants are women of color, 32% are LGBTQ+. We're really going after intersectional diversity with our support through our programs. Some grants won't fund us because we're helping women, and they don't understand that in the film industry, we are underrepresented, even though there's been so much work to increase that representation. I think it's gone up from 34% of speaking roles go to women. It's gone up to 35% in 5 years. 65% of the speaking roles go to men. That's insane to me. When we make up 50% of the population, they always talk about how like, it's the year of the women because we get like 2 more women directing these big films. The number of DPs, it's like 4%. It goes between 2% to 4% of the top 100 films are shot by women. So we really are underrepresented, and I think people don't realize that in the film industry.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I think on the whole, there's been like a lot of really great work and a lot of really great initiative to like change that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And even from when I started in the industry to now, it's like I've seen a huge paradigm shift, and I know plenty of really badass women, mostly on the crew side. Some of my favorite folks to work with on set are all women. It's like, I think it's improved, but I think it could do more.
Yeah,
for sure. And I was just kind of curious, like, how you view that as like the organization that's like part and parcel, like trying to make that push happen.
Yeah.
But I would agree with you. It's like, we're getting there, but especially in film, it's still pretty
slow. It's very slow.
It's
slow. We can't let Hollywood solve the problem that they created. We need like outside organizations that are just like pushing them all the time.
Sure. So what was life like before all this for you? Like, where did you come from? Because, I don't know that story super well, but I think it's also important to illustrate like, the history where somebody starts to where they are now.
Yeah. I've had like 1,000 lives before this. It's insane. Like my partner in Moonshot, anytime I tell her like a past story, she's like, what? When did that happen? I don't even know where to start, but I went to school for painting. And by the end of school, I was so sick of painting. I just started writing. I never wanted to paint again, but I did want to tell stories on paper. And I got my master's in education, art education, realized I hated teaching young kids. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
I give huge kudos to teachers.
Same.
Then I went to Mozambique for almost a year. I was training teachers there, teaching AIDS prevention, malaria prevention, all that stuff. I had always wanted to do international aid work, but the organization I was working for, they were really corrupt. It left a bad taste in my mouth. I left early. came back home, had no idea what I was going to do with myself. But I did realize that I love teaching English as a second language. I saw that as something that it really gives people economic possibilities. It really opens people's doors. So I started teaching ESL in New York City and went broke. So I started working for my mom, and that business was challenging property assessments to lower real estate taxes. I did that for 3 years, made a ton of money. It's the only form of law you can practice without being a lawyer.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I would go to court. I was 24 years old. I was arguing the value of people's homes and lowering people's taxes by this was in Westchester with the highest tax rate. Yeah. And I would lower people's taxes by $10,000 a year.
Oh my God.
And yeah, it was very intimidating, and I felt like a phony the whole time. I kept thinking someone was going to figure out that I was this 24-year-old art nerd, that I should not be looking at numbers. But I also realized at that point that I was representing all multimillionaires, and realized many of them couldn't do simple math. I would do a percentage on the phone, and they'd be like, "Wait, how did you do that?" I'm like, what? How do you own a $6 million house?
Right.
So I did that for 3 years. I was very good at it, but hated it. Felt like my soul was leaving my body. At the same time, I was writing all the time. I really wanted to publish. I had written 2 novels, really wanted to publish one of them. A friend of the family read one of them, and she had done some production with HBO in the 80s and was working on a new project, and she thought I had a good voice. So she asked if I knew anything about screenwriting, and I lied and said yes.
That's the way to do it. That's the way to do it. You
gotta just say yes. Yeah. And she's like, all right, well, we're meeting next month. And so for that month, I read a screenplay every day. I read every book on formatting. I came in knowing exactly how to do all the formatting. I was ready, and I loved it so much. I was like, oh, this is where I'm meant to be. Novel writing is so arduous, so many details, and I loved the idea of you can just think of such a succinct way of saying something, and in the future, a whole team of people will figure out what you meant and bring it to life. And I loved that feeling of collaboration. But it was also so slow too, working with these writing partners. So I started working on my own stuff, and I wrote and produced a short film with a friend that I met over coffee. And that film was called Lily and Mara. It was my first time making a film, actually producing something I wrote. It was incredible. I loved it so much. And then that's when Katrina posted on Facebook asking if people wanted to make a film in one weekend. And when she posted that, I was realizing I knew all the statistics at that time. It was starting to come out that 8% of films were directed by women. And I guess that was before the Me Too movement and Time's Up. But I knew that the representation was not good in Hollywood. And when she posted that and I was reading all the comments, I realized, if I wanted to refer a cinematographer, I could only recommend a man. If I wanted to refer a sound mixer, an editor, almost every single role, they would all be men. And I didn't think that I'm not sexist. But I realized because of my experience, I was only going to perpetuate the statistics that I didn't like. And so I realized I need an experience working with women so that I can, in the future, if I want to refer someone, I can say, okay, I loved working with this person. I'm going to refer them. And it might be a woman, it might be a man, but it's not going to be, the default isn't going to be just be a man.
Yeah.
And so that's why I wanted to work with Katrina.
I'll rewind all the way to the Mozambique part. Mm-hmm. Just as a side note, I do find it really interesting that teaching English as a second language gives people receiving that education, what you said, a leg up, mm-hmm. right? And maybe more opportunity. And it's something I never really considered until I started traveling internationally. I found it really interesting and the fact that you were able to offer, a service. I feel like that seems to be a trend, even though you're doing it for work. Uh-huh. It's there seems to be like you're offering like a service to help elevate a group of people. And, you know, in this case, it's like, you know, teaching people English as a second language so they have more opportunity in life, to now we are, you know, offering, you know, women and, you know, people of a diverse background who are interested in the film industry a platform to like get a leg up to do so. It's really interesting.
Well, I never saw the connection, so thanks for
You're
making
welcome.
that.
You're welcome. And so in all this, were you, you know, I guess I didn't ask, but like, were you in New York City this whole time, or like?
Yeah, I was in New York City. I was in Astoria, which I really hate living in a big city. I had like planned to live there for 2 years, and then I wanted to move to Thailand. That was like my goal.
Well, that worked out clearly.
Clearly. Yeah. But like a week after I moved to the city, I met my now husband.
Okay.
And I was like, all right, I've got to give this a shot. And he moved to the city to make it as a musician. And I was always like, I'm from a half an hour north of the city. So being in New York City didn't feel like a dream to me. It just kind of felt like, oh yeah, I'll just end up here. But for my husband, it was the dream. And he felt like if he left, he was giving up. He was like admitting defeat. And so after like 5 years, I really wanted to leave. We were so broke. We lived in this tiny little apartment with no outdoor space. I just wanted like a backyard so badly. I wanted to like grow basil. That was like my dream. And I knew that I had to stay there for him. It was where he wanted to be. And I was like, all right, I'll give it a few years. But the beauty of New York, of the city, is that like, no matter what you want to do, you can always find people that want to do it with you. So I actually forgot like 2 major businesses that I started.
Okay, we can fill in the gap. It's fine. Listen, we're both parents. There are like, the brain doesn't work the way it used to. Yeah,
I forgot my late 20s.
Yeah, sure.
So first, I started a company. I started Writer's Work, which I was taking writing classes, and all the writing conferences that I wanted to go to were super expensive. And I was like, I'm just going to start my own writer's conference. I was 27 at the time, 28. And I finished a book that I loved, and I tweeted the author. I was like, hey, if I host a conference, will you speak at it? And she was like, sure.
Oh, okay.
And so I was like, all right, I have one speaker. And then I like asked a friend of a friend who was an agent if she could come. She said yes. And then I got like 4 other random people.
Did you start like contacting people being like, well, this person said they come and this person said they come?
Yeah, you capitalize, you leverage everything. And then I was using Scrivener software for my screenwriting.
Oh, I've heard of that, yeah.
Yeah, they're great. I wrote to them and I was like, hey, I love your product and I'm hosting a writer's conference. Would you guys sponsor it? So they sent me a few $100s for that. And I hosted it. I had like 50 people there. It was really small. It was intimate. It was like people really loved it. And I ended up hosting 6 more conferences after that. And I started doing writers' retreats and writing classes. They weren't really writing classes. They were more like keeping the dream alive, like keeping your creative spirit sparked. But I only could have done that if I was living in the city, I feel like. If I was somewhere else, it would have been so hard to like find so many people that wanted to be writers.
You seem to have a trend of like, oh, this is a thing I want to do, but the established way of doing this thing doesn't really work for me or is too expensive or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to start my own thing. Is that something you've done like your whole life? Like as far back as you can remember? Or?
It's, what do they say? Like when you're brave, you're not doing it because you're not scared. It's because you're brave. What is that? There's an expression.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I can't think of it. I'll have to find it and I'll have to
edit
insert it in.
I'll do a voiceover.
Yeah.
Brave.
Yeah. Or we'll just get a completely different voice to like dub your face. But
I never feel brave. I never feel fearless when I'm doing something. I go into things very naive. I just think like, okay, well, how hard could it be?
But I think a certain level of naivete is like healthy.
Yeah, it's
right?
necessary.
Because if you knew all the possible outcomes of everything, you wouldn't do anything.
Yeah.
Like you would just be scared stiff. I can't think of any personal examples because I'm like trying to like see where I want to take this conversation next. But it's like, yeah, I think if nobody was naive in any respect, then like very few really like poignant, pertinent things would get done. It's like you learn and you gain experience.
Yeah.
But like at the end of the day, it's like, can I tell you what my life is going to look like in 5 years or in 10 years? Not really. I mean, I can plan stuff and I can like try to work towards goals just like anybody else can. But I don't think anybody can really say, oh yeah, this is what it's going to be. It's like everybody's just, even the most successful people in the world, in some facet of their life, they are just figuring stuff out one day at a time.
Totally.
Which makes it kind of exciting.
Kind of, yeah. If you look at it that way, yeah, definitely. And also I want to add that everything that you see that is already established has gone through this process. Like we don't get to see the period that something is getting developed. That is all hidden behind, and that's hidden in the past. It's hidden in someone else's like memories. We're only seeing the most successful version of everything. And so you can't ever compare yourself, like any dream that you have, you can't compare it to what's already existing because you have to let it get to that point first. Like you have to do all the legwork and figuring things out before it can be. Like when I think of the film challenge, when people see it now, they think like, how did you start this? But when we started it, we were using our Facebook accounts for it. Like we had no idea what we were doing.
Yeah. And you know, this has come up before mostly because of me, but it's like, I still like suffer a lot from like comparison syndrome, you know, where if like you catch me on the right day, maybe I'm like in a bad mood because I just feel like, you know, maybe I'm having the attitude of like, why should I even try? Because this, that, and the other thing has already happened. But to your point, it's like, yeah, you can only see what's been established, and anything that's like going to be new and exciting and innovative or whatever, you know, pick your buzzword, you know, 5 or so years down the line, well, all that groundwork's being laid right now and nobody could tell you what that is. You know, it's like you could look at something, and I can't think of any specific example, but some business or some director or an author or whatever, I don't know, pick your poison. But it's like, you could look at something that's not maybe fully developed and you go, I don't know about this. And just because you write it off doesn't mean it's going to not turn into something like huge and maybe paradigm shifting down the road. You never know.
True. And to speak about the competition aspect, so during the pandemic, we started this virtual workshop series and we interviewed the top women of Hollywood. We've had like Alma Harrell, who did Honey Boy, Catherine Hardwicke, she directed Twilight, major directors, cinematographers, editors, everything. And one thing that I've noticed is that like these are people, in my mind, these are people that have arrived. Like they are living the dream. But when you talk to them, like it's like talking to anyone else that's like, oh, when am I going to get my next job? Like, oh, I'm so embarrassed by this work. And like, they don't feel like they've arrived. Like they still feel like you're actually never going to get to the feeling of arrival. You're never going to get to the feeling of like not comparing yourself. And so like you have to get comfortable with that, like at every stage of your career, because you're always going to be there.
It's a little cliche, but it's like, it's all about the journey, not the destination. But it's cliche for a reason. Yeah. It's like you know, even if you get to a place you want to be, by the time you get there, your goals or priorities have shifted. So it's like, it's really just like a notch in your belt to say, hey, great, we did this, we had this experience, and now it's on to something else. But I think it's something really important to like kind of keep in the forefront a little bit, because especially in creative pursuits and filmmaking, it's like everything is such like kind of like a mind, you know?
So out of your control.
Oh, it's so out of your control. Are you carving out any time for yourself for your own pursuits, like continuing to write? Any plans or ambitions to make another film? Like I'm curious because, you know, life gets really complicated. When you add having a family onto that, it gets exponentially more complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just kind of curious, like, are you able to find those pockets of time to pursue what you want to pursue?
Yeah. I feel like I only have 20% brain functioning at all times. And I use every bit of that on Moonshot. But when I'm able to take like a day off, I do work on my screenwriting. I haven't in a while, but actually like last week, I did the finishing touches on a script and submitted it to the Blacklist.
Nice.
It's funny because I have so many connections now through Moonshot.
Yeah.
But I don't want to abuse them. I
Smart.
feel like I'm a leader. I'm representing so many people. I don't want to take advantage of these connections that I've made.
Well, you want to
so
do
far.
it on your own accord too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that totally makes sense.
So I am going the more traditional route of like, just notice me. And so I'm glad that I submitted that again. And yeah, I just find that even like if I'm not writing, even though I'm doing like a lot of great work, I just still don't feel like myself. Like writing is really the only outlet that makes me feel like myself. And sometimes like I'm just on edge and I don't know why. And then like a few weeks later, I'll get a free hour and I'll work on a scene. And I'm like, oh my God, I feel like I'm like breathing better now. Like I feel so much more relaxed. And it's because I didn't choose writing chose me, and I've got to honor that.
That's really interesting. That's a really interesting take. It's like a lot of times you don't feel like yourself, like, you know, not that you're putting on airs, but it's like you're how do I want to say it? You're like putting so much of yourself into other things.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that little thread that's just for you kind of gets ignored sometimes.
Yeah.
I totally relate to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I you know, even around here, you know, I come here and I'm doing sessions like this, or I'm editing something, or like my whole mission in life at the beginning of the year so far has like literally just been talking to people, like trying to bolster up the media company and like just kind of take a little bit more of a focus away from cinematography and put it more onto like building a business.
Mm-hmm.
And it's exhausting,
Yeah.
you know? And it makes me think there's so many things that I want to do. I actually now am sitting here wondering what is the thing that makes me myself? Like,
yeah,
it's interesting. I don't have an answer.
Yeah.
There's lots of creative things like I want to do. And like music was my first love and like what I tried doing professionally, and that didn't work out, and that's fine. But yeah, I wonder what now I have to think about it. Now I'm going to go home and think about this. It's like, what is the thing that makes me feel like
you're going to start a whole new career trajectory?
Yeah, maybe I'll start writing and see what happens. It's like we both have young kids, and we both have, you know, I sometimes I'll put it to you this way. Sometimes I feel like I'm like riding a weird line where it's like, you know, we left the city because we wanted more space and we wanted to own something. We want to start a family, all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And we were getting priced out, and it's a common tale. Thankfully, we're in a town where there are a lot of other creative professionals.
Yeah.
But specific to like family life, like how has that impacted just, you know, I could say, how has that impacted your career? But I kind of want to pose it as like, how has that impacted like the big picture of like career and ambition and all this stuff? I'm just so curious, and I don't want to like kind of box it in too much. I just want to get your thoughts on like being in the film industry and like always trying to figure out what the next thing is, and then trying to balance that with being a solid foundation for family and kids and all that stuff.
I feel at this point in my life that like at the same time I have it all and I have nothing.
Yeah.
I feel like I have the life that I've always wanted. I have the house, the car, the kids.
Are you growing basil in your yard?
I'm growing basil.
Perfect.
I have a cute cat, a cute husband, a successful career. I'm helping people. And at the same time, like, I feel like I'm not the best mom I want to be. I'm not the best partner I want to be. I'm not the best friend I want to be. My house is a mess, like everything. I feel like I'm falling short on everything. And that is just, I'm realizing like that's something I need to get comfortable with. because I'm just not going to be able to have everything I want and give it all that I want at the same time.
Well, I think that's actually really important. And I love how you like phrased it, where it's like, I have everything, but I also am falling short everywhere. And it's like, wow, I feel great about this, but also everything's horrible.
Yeah.
You know?
Uh-huh.
It's really interesting. And I find that maybe surrender is a better word, where it's like, you just kind of surrender to what your life is right now, you know?
Yeah.
And figuring out ways to make all the pieces fit, even though sometimes you're jamming them in because it's maybe not exactly the right piece of the jigsaw puzzle, but it's close enough.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, it's really interesting. How have you found acclimating to life in the Hudson Valley as a creative?
Yeah. As a creative? Well, I still feel like my work is centered in the city.
Yeah.
I'm on Zoom every single day with my work partner, Katrina. And then I go to the city for our film challenges.
Totally.
I'm there for a month at a time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. We're going to be doing it in LA this October. So I'm going to be in LA for like 5 or 6 weeks.
Oh, fun.
Which is hard with the kids.
Are they going with?
They're going to come for like a week or two.
Yeah.
Last time we did an LA challenge, it was right before the pandemic. And my daughter was just about to turn 2. And so she flew out for like the last week. And my in-laws flew in too. And so they were helping. It's like a whole big extended family affair to make it possible. But I feel like every day, like I just go into Rough Draft and I meet another filmmaker or another creative person. Like there's so many creative people in Kingston. So like I never had the creative withdrawal. Everyone here is so ambitious too, which I was worried about losing. Like anytime I leave the greater New York City area, I feel like I'm like, where are people's ambition?
But speaking purely creatively, I think there's such a diversity in like what people pursue and what people are passionate about up here. It's really refreshing, and it also is just a constant reminder of saying it's like, oh yeah, sometimes being creative is just enough. It doesn't need to be like, if one day you feel like writing poetry, that's just as good as, you know, making a feature film. It's all about like the self-expression.
Yeah.
And sharing in like a creative community too.
Mm-hmm.
Versus, you know, having to be the next biggest and best thing in whatever your chosen pursuit is.
Yeah.
You know?
And also when creative pursuits are so out of your control and they take so much time for them to happen, like you really need to be in a place where it's affordable as well. Like if you're spending all of your money on rent, then you end up getting a day job that you hate and it's soul crushing and you don't have any time to actually pursue your creative stuff. So it's nice to come to a place where like it's a little bit more affordable than the city and it buys you some time.
Yeah, it buys you some time and it buys you a little bit of like mental space, I would say. I mean, I know we just talked about how like crazy life is with kids and finding even an hour to you know, just sit down with yourself and like create something is hard. But all that being said, I can't imagine doing that, having that whole situation and then also being crammed into a tiny apartment in the city, which we were. And it's like, I will be the first person to say that we're very fortunate and for once made a good decision, because we made terrible apartment decisions for years. And like for once we made a good decision that at least now I can, on a sunny morning, sit in my living room and the sun comes through the windows. And it's like, that is like a moment that I'm thankful to have. So what's next for you? Like you probably said it already, but just as a reminder, like when's the next film challenge coming up? Or is that the next thing for Moonshot, or is there another program coming up before that?
Right now we have our pilot accelerator open. So you can submit a completed pilot script for TV. I think the deadline's April 5th. I'm not sure. Check our website, moonshotinitiative.org. And we'll select 8 fellows. Those fellows get 3 weeks of training, and then they get to pitch to 25 major studios, including HBO, Showtime, Hulu, Netflix, Amazon, all the big ones.
That's so cool. I think that's super cool that, the people who apply and get in and like really get that training to then at the end of it have something tangible like, yeah, here you go. We're going to send you into these rooms with these people. Like that's wild and really great. And I commend you for like pulling something like that together. That can't be an easy feat.
It was a lot of work.
Yeah.
So we had been hosting these virtual workshops, and the most popular ones by far were writing, anything with writing.
Yeah.
And we realized that our community needed help getting their foot in the door. And so we're like, let's just start an accelerator. Same thing as always.
This doesn't exist. Let's make it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an amazing opportunity, and I feel very honored to be running it as well because I've learned so much from it. I've gotten to sit in on almost 100 pitch meetings.
Awesome.
And I've learned so much. It's fun. And then we have our film challenge coming to LA. I think applications open in July, and then we're hosting the challenge in October.
Cool. Right on. Well, before I let you go, where is the best place for people to find out more about you and more about Moonshot Initiative?
Moonshotinitiative.org is our website. That's the best place. You can also find us on Instagram. I've actually tried to get off of Instagram almost entirely.
Oh, all I do is post silly memes now to my stories. That's all I do.
Yeah.
It's like I haven't, it's a sad place for me.
Yeah. I uninstall it from my phone during the work days.
Oh, nice. Good for you.
I uninstall it, and then on weekends, if I feel the desire, then I reinstall it. And I've been finding that I don't have the desire anymore.
Yeah. We could have a whole separate conversation about best practices to focus down, rein in your focus.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm working on.
Instagram was like my beast before. I was spending an hour at least every day on it.
Yeah.
But find us on Instagram.
After all that. Yeah.
Yeah. If you want to waste an hour of your life.
It'll be a worthy hour.
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, thank you so much for being here, Tracy. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. All right, everybody. There you have it. That was my interview with Tracy Sayre of Moonshot Initiative. You can learn all about what they have going on over at moonshotinitiative.org on the internet. Speaking of the internet, you can learn more about the show at nosetpath.com or on Instagram at nosetpathpodcast. You can learn about me, your host, Drew English, at drewenglish.com or at Drew English with 2 H's at the end on Instagram. And Apple Podcasts, Spotify, 5-star review, YouTube, thumbs up, subscribe. We love all that stuff. I know I've been inconsistent with episodes, but we're still here. We're still cranking them out. So until next time, take it easy.